broadcast network, AfterBuzz TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your number one source for after-show entertainment. AfterBuzz TV, the destination for TV superfans. Producing aftershows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows. Interviewing celebrities and showrunners. And bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Hello and welcome to an all-new UFC on AfterBuzz TV. My name is Daria Berenato. You can find me on Twitter at DariaB28. You can follow along with our show on SoundCloud, iTunes, leave us comments, tweet us at ABTVUFC. We love to hear your guys' input, so let us know. I'm here with Mr. J-Tan as always. We can find him at JTan716 on Twitter. And we're here with a special guest, but not a new guest, Mr. Alan Jouban.
Our first returning champion, as it were.
Yes.
Good to be back. Good to be back.
What happened was we had him on our show, and then he won, just like everybody else we have on our show.
Immediately after, yes.
Yeah. So with you having with Alan having a match coming up in just about a month, I think, right?
Just about a month out.
Los Angeles, the prelims of UFC 180. It's 83, correct?
4. I think
84.
83 is
Silva Diaz.
Oh yeah, Silva Diaz. Yeah, so 184.
Weidman Belfort.
Mm-hmm. And Ronda Rousey also defending against Kat Zingano. Mm-hmm. And you were fighting Filthy Welch.
Richard Walsh, correct.
Yeah. So we're hoping the rub happens once again here.
Oh.
Knock on wood.
Oh, we know the rub will happen. We'll get to that later, though. But tonight we're going to be talking about UFC Fight Night 60, Gustafsson versus Anthony Rumble Johnson in Stockholm, Sweden. It was at a new stadium in Stockholm, Sweden, the Tele2 Arena.
Tele2 Arena, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and
big 30,000.
It seated 30,000. That's one of the biggest arenas they've ever held the UFC in.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I believe, I think in one of the post-fight interviews with the European head of the European area for the UFC, David Green. I'm blanking on his last name. I apologize, but he had said, of course, so this show, because of the time difference, was quite late. In
2 a.m.
Yeah, I think it started. Did it start at 2 a.m.?
The main card, I think, started at 2 a.m.
Okay. And tickets were still being sold throughout that time. Because, guys, they wanted to broadcast it live here in the U.S., and because of the time difference, henceforth, unfortunately, the locals get the short end of the stick, and you got to show up whenever the show starts. But tickets had, I don't know that they necessarily sold out, but you're talking about selling tickets throughout the show. I don't think that happens anywhere in North America on a standard UFC show. So, something to be said for that.
Absolutely. I think the fact, like you said earlier, we don't have a UFC in Stockholm, Sweden once a week. Mm-hmm. So when we do go there, we draw that fan base, and it's an amazing fan base. Over the past couple of years, Sweden, Ireland, a lot of European countries have really been a strong fan base for the UFC.
Yeah, it was like you said, it was a huge arena, and it was after hours. It was a late show, and my last fight in Brazil was another one like that, where I didn't fight until I think it was like 3 a.m.
Ouch!
And it was only about 5,000 to 8,000 person arena, and it was still packed solid. So I was really surprised how many Brazilian fans came out. Same with this one though, to pack a 30,000 person arena at 3 a.m. in the morning is just insane. But you saw it on TV. You could see the grand scale of things. The octagon looks so tiny, and it was
really
unbelievable.
Did. Seeing it in a bigger arena like that really gives the UFC such an amazing feel. It really brings it to the next level. You look down at that octagon and you're like, wow, this is big.
It reminds me of it being in Saitama Arena in Japan.
That's always
the
cool.
octagon, or when Dream or Pride would do those shows. It's interesting because it's such a great looking modern venue inside. It's clean, state-of-the-art looking stuff.
Right.
But then you feel like you can also see it's lit in a way that you can see the top. It's huge, but you can see the guys in the nosebleeds. Watching this whole thing. And,
definitely well designed.
Yeah.
Alan, so when you fought, and it was at 3 a.m. Brazil, you said.
Correct, yeah.
When you got to Brazil a week prior to your fight, did you try to adjust to Brazilian time? But then that would just mess you up, right? Because then you'd be fighting at 3 a.m. Brazilian time.
Right, so I can't quite remember how we did it, but it was something tricky, and we thought about maybe trying to acclimate to staying up later. But with the time change, it actually worked out into our favor. So I was fighting at 3 a.m. Brazilian time, but it was actually around 7 p.m. in California Pacific time.
Right.
So being on the West Coast, it worked out perfectly. I was used to fighting at that time, but it was just the week that we were there for fight week in Brazil, fighting at 3 a.m. Obviously, we didn't want to go to bed at 11 or 12 o'clock at night every night because we'd have to be ready to go at 3 a.m. later in the week. So we try to stay up as late as possible, and I'm assuming that's what a lot of the fighters did for this card as well, is try to stay up late, sleep late, try to get acclimated to training late at night. When we did my weight cut, we did it around midnight, the pre-weight cut the night before weigh-ins on Thursday night, because we were just trying to get used to getting the body going late at night. You don't want to be coming down at midnight when you have to go on in a couple more hours. So
Absolutely.
it's an interesting little thing to mess with, but that's how it is when you're fighting internationally.
That's got to be so bizarre, because it's one thing when you're a fighter, when you travel to these shows, guys. A lot of the time, regardless of where you're going, fight week, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but as my experience has been, you're encompassed in your own little universe for that week. You go to you stay at the hotel. You go to open training or press conferences or stuff like that. You don't really get to go out and see the city or the sites where you're visiting. You're there to do a job. You're there for a week, and you focus only on that. And especially being a fighter, you don't really want to think. You don't want to take a break. You want to focus on the job at hand, which is at the end of the week. And of course, right afterwards, they kick you out, and you're back home. So that's a bubble unto itself. But then having to deal with a time difference and basically being like raver lifestyle or raver hours, sleep in late and wake up late, that's even more so kind of not jarring but awkward. Like you're not in tune with anything.
It's a weird way to
surroundings.
travel, obviously. Like I said, my last fight was in Brazil. I fought at 3 a.m. It was a dream of mine to fight in Brazil, but I didn't really get to see Brazil. I didn't do a lot of tourist stuff. I go to the mall every day, and we eat food, sit in a massage chair, kill time. And that was just, the routine every day. I didn't get to go out and explore a lot of stuff. You're cutting weight, you're doing press conferences and whatnot, and then you normally leave the next day after the fight. So, yeah, fighters don't really get to explore that much. The cornermen do a little bit, but the fighters themselves don't get to do it that much, but especially when it's these odd times that we're fighting at.
It's kind of ironic when you're a fighter and they say, "So I've been to Brazil. Oh, how is it?" I have no idea.
Did you see this?
Couldn't tell you. Oh, the beach is nice. Never been.
The arena's great.
Yes, absolutely. As I'm sure the people in Stockholm said last night. We're going to start from the bottom of the card, and we're going to work our way up to the top. It was a very interesting main event. It was a very interesting card altogether. There was a couple really controversial calls. We're going to get to those later. I know you have a lot to say about those. Let's start at the bottom. We have Mirsad Bektic versus Paul Redsner-Redman. Mirad won via unanimous decision, 30-27, 30-27, 30-25.
Yeah.
Definitely a dominant performance by him. Next on the card, we have Merbek Bektic. Sounds very similar. Merbek Taisimov versus Anthony Christodoulou.
Right.
Taisimov won via KO in round 2, 38 seconds in.
Can I stop on this fight? I don't know if you guys watched this.
Please
did you
do.
see this fight? So it was just an interesting fight. I mean, I'm an active fighter, so I never talk negatively much about other fighters. But this was just an interesting matchup because Mirsabek, the Tiger Muay Thai guy, he's a beast. He's an animal. I mean,
we're talking about Bektic and Paul Redmond.
Oh, I'm talking about the Christodoulou.
Oh, okay.
Fight,
Gotcha.
the one that we were just speaking of.
Yeah.
And the guy from Tiger Muay Thai who he fought, he's an animal. He's got he's an athlete. He's got good jiu-jitsu, phenomenal. He's got good wrestling and phenomenal Muay Thai. And the guy that he fought, Christodoulou, they were saying he was an undefeated fighter. I think out of Greece might have been what they said. But they said he was named the top fighter in Greece. So he was like 7-0, named the top fighter in the country. And I don't know if you watched this fight, but this guy did not look in shape. This guy had a tire around his waist. I mean, he just looked very amateurish. Striking was very, very awkward. He looked very uncomfortable on the feet, and he didn't seem to have much of a wrestling takedown. I mean, I'm thinking his one chance might have been on the ground, which is where he got knocked out at the end of the fight. So it was a bit of a mismatch. I kind of bewildered by that fight.
I think it's really hard. Obviously, in recent years, we've seen the UFC go to so many different countries and so many different nations around the world. And when we go there, we find out different things about each kind of country and what their fighters are like.
Their fighters.
And the standards. That's a great point. For most most of the time we have, extremely high standards and we see competition equally all over the world. But sometimes we get these countries like, if it is Greece, who have these top ranked fighters, and then we see them enter the UFC and get their butts kicked.
Yeah.
You know what?
And it really goes to,
Yeah. MMA is, I think, for as much as MMA is a universal sport, or the appeal of it can be universal, because it's such a raw and carnal thing that everybody can understand quite quickly, notwithstanding that there's certain rules. Not all countries are alike, and not all of them are even in terms of their standard of fighter. Obviously, wrestling is a strong thing here with us because we have such a collegiate and high school and and wrestling squad. By the same token, Iran, for example, I'm pulling a country out of the blue, also really strong wrestling, but not necessarily known for their striking. Brazil, obviously, they've got great grappling, and they've got a decent striking pedigree as well. Their boxing team's pretty well known. Of course, you've got Vale Tudo there, but different countries are going to have their strengths and weaknesses, and I think we saw that with Greece. China is also another one that unfortunately kind of suffers from that, not being in the being more the middle to the lower end of the totem pole of MMA skill. They've got obviously a great tradition of martial arts. Right. Sancho boxing is still pretty active there, as I understand. And it dates back. Their lineage dates back for centuries, but that doesn't necessarily equate or translate yet to MMA. There's been I'm trying to think was it Zhang, not He Ping.
They're having trouble in a lot of the bigger weight divisions as well.
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah.
A lot of these countries.
There was a fighter that Chinese fighter that just fought and lost, I believe, one or two shows ago.
Ping or. No.
Yeah, I think
I think it might have a real name.
No, I think it was Zhang Liping.
Zhang Liping.
So, but and he was taught me he won Tough China, but as of the last that show that he lost on, he was 7-8 or 9-7, 9-8.
Right.
You can be a big fish in a little pond is the thing. That's what we see when MMA goes global, and when you start to pick from different countries. It takes some time to develop those fighters, and the UFC going in there, or any international promotion going in there and doing a show. You obviously have to use locals because those are the guys that are going to put butts in seats. Right. Unfortunately, those locals aren't necessarily going to be at the same standard of the fighters that the UFC is bringing in there.
Exactly. I mean, it's such a good point. Alan, for example, came from RFA. Correct. You know what I mean? We have a specific local league that happens to be really high professionalism-wise. Yeah. So they feed directly into the UFC. So we have our, RFA experience level guys coming from California with that level of intensity, and we know that it matches up well to the UFC. Yeah. When we go to these foreign territories, we don't know how well their local organizations are going to match up. So not to say that, their best isn't great, but they don't have the level of competition in the local scale like we do, and I think that says a lot.
Yeah, and like you said, I agree with all that. And there is, I'm not saying that international fighters aren't coming out strong. There's a lot of amazing international talent. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that
we're going to talk about Amir Khani in a minute.
Right, but RFA, as you alluded to a while ago, is the college football for MMA.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're able to come up and experience everything. And then with some of these other international countries, they don't really have an organized amateur or pro division, whereas it's just blended. Some of these don't have an organized amateur league. So guys just come up from the gym, and all of a sudden they're fighting pro, and they don't go through not only the college football, they're not even going up through the little leagues, the amateurs and whatever. So maybe they're mounting a 7-0 record and then getting called into the UFC. And when the bright lights are on and you're going against tough competition, is starting to show. But it was a tough fight for Christodoulou. It was definitely a tough debut against the guy that he fought from Tiger Muay Thai. But it showed that he was a little weak in some skills. Yeah,
I think we should talk about the match specifically as well, because frankly it was short with the finish in round 2. In round 1. Taisimov, I have a note here that he dropped Christo with a low kick, which really impressed me. And like you said, Christodoulou looked a little bit puffy and fluffy. And I was thinking, should he drop down to 45? He looked like he had the extra weight that he could drop down to 45. But then I also wondered, is he necessarily going to fare that much better at 45? Because that is obviously a powerhouse division.
The speed and
The
all.
speed, exactly.
Yeah. The finish was Christodoulou shooting in and Taisumov just sprawling on it and throwing a shot to the head, dropping him, and then ground and pound. Yeah, I saw ground and pound. I was a little bit surprised that it was ruled as a KO, but because several shots were on the ground. But yeah, it was definitely Taisumov's match.
He was able to ragdoll him. I mean, the guy shot in. It wasn't a fully committed shot, but he shot in. He got thrown to the side and just got ragdolled at the end.
Yeah.
And like I said, taking nothing away from Mirabek, if that's his name. He's a beast. He's a beast. But Christodoulou was in over his head on that fight.
Yeah, well, kudos to Mirabek, because a lot of those unorthodox fighters sometimes can challenge us. It's like they say in jiu-jitsu, the white belts on the mat are the most dangerous people on the mat because you never know what they're going to do. It's kind of the same when you have not as experienced fighter in the cage. They could throw some wild punch, and you know how MMA works. The next second you could be knocked out. So kudos to him for keeping composure and really putting on a good performance, as short as it was.
I agree.
Next up on the card, we have some big guys at 205. We have Nikita Al Capone Krylov versus Stanislav Stucky Nedkov. Krylov won via submission round 1, a minute and 24 into it.
Yeah, this I believe was Nedkov's return after quite a long hiatus.
Yeah.
He came out. I think he came out aggressive. Was with his striking. But Krylov he dropped him with a knee. Worked for that for a gator roll. I thought, which I. Which I incorrectly was thinking in my head was a Darce. I couldn't quite see the arms, but I was like, oh, is that a Darce? And
it was similar.
Yeah, really close. And ended up finishing him with a standing guillotine. Finished Stucky with the guillotine there. And that was kind of the first of a series of first round finishes. Guys, this will play on Fox several times this week, and then later on, I believe, give it 2 months or so, available on Fight Pass. For what? $9.99. UFCFightPass.com. But it was this was a show between the prelims and the main card. Definitely a show worth going out of your way to watch. A lot of fast action and interesting matches in the action itself. The controversial the decisions notwithstanding, and quite frankly, guys, that's worth watching as well. Study those finishes. We'll talk about. We'll identify them in a second, but they're worth studying and kind of using the remote and going frame, and decide for yourself whether you thought those were reasonable finishes or not. It's good homework. This card is a good homework for.
It's fun to look at because we have guys like Big John on here, and we still debate the rules and the negotiations of the rules that are still being established in MMA and the UFC specifically.
Yeah.
So it's still not a black or white thing. So it's interesting to see different perspectives, whether it's from the refs or the judges or the front seaters or you guys watching at TV on a home.
Yeah. It's, I think, worth mentioning now, too, anybody that's interested in continuing this conversation with about the rules and the finishes. Number one, tweet us. Hit us up. The hashtag is
ABTV UFC.
That, as well as 3 weeks from now, scheduled, we have for the, February 15th. The show.
Herb Dean.
Yeah, Herb Dean will be in-house. Referee Herb Dean, we can talk about various finishes and, things that he's seen in his experience. So we'll continue to get that kind of input from regulatory officials.
Definitely. Yeah, send those questions in because Herb Dean's a very knowledgeable guy. And if you want to know it, ask it then.
Yeah. So let's keep going here.
Yep.
Oh, this next one was one of the two controversial finishes, right?
Okay, so we have Andy the Little Axe Ogle versus Makwan Mr. Finland Americani. If you didn't know who he was before tonight, you definitely do. Not only by his performance, but by his post-fight speech. We'll get to that in a second. So Makwan Americani came out in the first second of the fight, ran to the center of the octagon with a flying knee, hit Andy Ogle, it looked like in the stomach, dropped him, finished it up with a couple shots, and that was it. The ref jumped in.
8 seconds.
8 seconds
I think
into the fight.
I dare say this will probably go down as the fastest UFC match in 2015.
In 2015, thus far, definitely. It's going to be hard to beat it. What do you think, Alan?
That was crazy, that fight. I remember watching Ogle go to the ring, and they said that he's with Team Alpha Male now.
Yeah.
And I saw Uriah Faber and one of the other well-known coaches at Alpha Male in the corner, and I'm thinking, okay, he's got a good team. He's been training at Alpha Male. He's going to come prepared. And, they've been in Finland doing press all week. And 8 seconds later, the fight is over. Yeah. And I was like, what the hell just happened? But, yeah, the guy, Americani, man, the guy's got personality. The kid's got spunk. I think even they were saying, who was it? Somebody was really impressed. It might not have been Dana White. It might have been whoever held the post-fight press conference or someone. But people were saying pretty much, you could tell not only by this kid's performance, but the guy's got personality.
Yeah.
He looks like he could be a star, And, man, the only thing I was thinking about was, did they wave off the glove touch right before the bell? Because, that's kind of,
Was there a glove touch?
There was no glove touch. It was ding and then double flying knee. So that's just the only thing, that kind of had me wanting to...
Oh, maybe he thought he was running to touch his hand. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's just an unspoken... it's not unspoken, but, normally there's a glove touch at the beginning of most MMA fights.
Right.
And then a lot of times if we don't want to touch gloves, we'll just make eye contact and we'll ask, or the guy will say, no, or... this kind of like... You usually let the guy know.
We see the body language a lot.
Yeah,
right.
And, if there's bad blood, it's most of the time it's understood there's not going to be a touch. Or if it's some kind of weird energy, they'll let each other know, not touching gloves. But anyway, these guys didn't have any history together.
Right.
As soon as the bell rang, though, he went for that flying knee. I don't know if Ogle was going for a jab or overhand or a glove touch or what, but needless to say, he got caught, and the guy capitalized on it.
Let me ask, is that... I know that's kind of the unspoken culture that you make eye contact and you decide, are we touching gloves or are we not? Yeah. Has there ever been a scenario, or is it the least bit common, where two guys don't make eye contact when they're that far apart and that thing is never established, whether you're touching or you're not?
Well, I mean, it could go down that way, but I think it's just
Has it ever for you?
For me, no. I'm kind of a guy that I enjoy, unless I have some kind of beef or history with a guy, that I usually will touch gloves, at least in the first round. I don't necessarily like to do it. I don't like when fights get too lovey-dovey. I can't stand it. Unless you're like, two well-known legends, gladiators, and this is a retirement fight.
And you just beat it out of each other.
And you're hugging in the fifth round, and you're like, all right, let's hug and let's do it. Okay, then have your Rocky moment. But when guys are on the undercard and they're hugging every 3 rounds,
I agree.
I'm just like, I need some animosity here. Come on.
Yeah, it's almost like they're sharing their pain too well. It's like, come on, there's got to be a little bit of nerve there.
Wow. It's a gladiator sport. Let me see a little bit of animosity or something. So I don't like that too much. But most guys at least know, let's touch gloves at least in the first round of the fight, or let's just wave it off. A lot of times guys will at least go out of the way to say, I don't want to touch gloves, rather than doing the automatically touching. So it was just a little weird. I mean, nothing. Americani, is that his name?
Yeah.
He didn't do anything wrong on his part. He did the flying knee, and then he didn't stop until the ref pulled him off. Yeah. And he did a great job.
Did you think it was an early stoppage?
Let me look at my notes. What did I have here? It says good stoppage here.
Okay.
This is the one that Joe Rogan had a bit of a problem with. Joe Rogan, he was in on the excitement and the emotion. I didn't necessarily disagree with Joe Rogan, but I thought it was a good stoppage. When you watch it, is this the one where Ogle was trying to take down the ref after, correct?
Yeah, correct.
He grabbed him with a double leg.
So with that being said, yes, you got to give guys a fighting chance. But I believe when you watch the replay, the guy's hands dropped to the ground. He was he was not unconscious. That is established. I think that's what Joe Rogan was trying to allude to, that he wasn't knocked out. But he wasn't knocked out, but he was out on his feet, where he was unconscious. He was not properly defending himself. Right. And obviously when you grab a guy to take a guy down who's the referee and he was wearing pants and you're continually trying to fight the referee, then you're not in the right state of mind. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. So it was. I think it was a good stoppage.
The last time I saw something like that was when Ronda Rousey beat Alexis Davis, and she continued to grab the ref 5 Mississippi seconds after the fight was over. So judging from that and looking at this, it's very similar in the fact that they weren't in a proper state of mind to establish, a black panted man versus, a bare-legged fighter. So I think at that point you're like, okay, it was a good stoppage.
And I'm a guy that's like always, being a fighter, I always want the fighter to have a chance, because we get rocked in the gym and it happens, and you're able to come back. But you also have to look at position-wise. Americani was standing up, sprawled out over him, ready to rain down more punches, where Ogle was on his butt, disoriented, grabbing, reaching for anything. So even though he wasn't knocked out and he was somewhat trying to fight, if the fight would have gone any longer, he would have taken much unwarranted damage. He wouldn't have needed to take it, So it was a good stoppage when you think about, okay, let's let the fight go 15 more seconds. He would have got kneed in the face. He would have got beat up really badly. So
see, that's how I look at it. I go, okay, if the fight would have continued, would it have kept going the same way? And if there's a question, if there's like, oh, maybe he could have done this, then maybe it's questionable. But in my mind, he was in such a dominant position, he wouldn't have been able to get up.
I agree completely.
There's that, and generally I agree. I thought the stoppage was reasonable as well. You might not have. It might not have been bad for it to go a couple more seconds and see if Andy could get his wits together. But in watching the replay, I did notice when Andy's hands were down. On top of that, his eyes were down. He was not looking at Amir Khani. He was out for that moment. I don't think it's unreasonable for that match to have been stopped. To the point, though, about the glove touch, in the post-fight press conference, Amir Khani, who was definitely taking a page out of Conor McGregor's book, I think he's props to you.
And well-dressed, might I say. He was very well-dressed at the post-fight.
Makwan, Mr. Finland, go for it. He's very confident. He knows. I think he claimed himself to be the most handsome man in Finland.
That's so
but in the post-fight press conference, he said specifically that... crap, I lost my train of thought. What was it? Glove touch.
Glove touch, yeah.
In researching Andy, he noticed that apparently he has a trend to run right in. Andy has a trend to run right into the front, kind of in the middle of the octagon at the beginning, almost blitzing his guy. And he said
he planned on meeting him there.
Yeah, meeting him there with a flying knee to the face. Yeah. So there was a little bit of strategy involved there, but that was one of the two matches that was questionable in terms of at least people's interpretation of the finish.
It was a hell of a UFC debut. I think win or lose, this guy is definitely going to be one of those guys on the rise. I mean, he obviously made a name for himself with that little post-fight interview, and then at the post-fight press conference, he continued with that. So I like him.
And it earned him a bonus at the end of the night.
And it earned him a bonus, like he said in the little interview.
Except we still don't know how he is as a fighter. I mean, I didn't glean too much from 8 seconds.
In the UFC. We can go back and look at his other stuff.
There's that, yes. True.
Next, we have Kenny Robertson versus Sultan Avilov. Kenny Robertson won via TKO in round 1, 2 minutes and 42 in. Yeah.
Kenny did really well there. He also came out blitzing against his opponent, Sultan. Took the back standing and just kept the pressure on. At a certain point, midway through the match, Aliyev threw a spinning back kick, which just completely whiffed. It looked good, technique-wise at least, but did not hit its mark. And Kenny saw the opening, landed a left, and then a right as Aliyev was falling. And
that is my biggest fear when guys do spinning moves. I mean, when I see it at the high level, I'm like, yeah, do it. But when I see it at a lower level, I'm like, please protect your face when you come back around the other side, because they're always there waiting for that right hand or whatever it is to catch them, and he timed it perfectly. So kudos to him.
What is the key to that when you on a spinning back kick? How to protect yourself?
Yes,
I have an answer, but I will say right now that I am not the master of these. So I teach my students how to do them, but I'm not that great at them in the fights. But the key to that, I would say, is it's called a spinning back kick, but you don't necessarily spin out of control, because when you spin, you're out of control. You're letting gravity or momentum take control, but what you really want to do is just turn completely backwards. You want to turn from 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock and throw the kick, and then be able to control yourself. And when he threw it, he missed. So obviously when you miss, like kicking a soccer ball, the ball disappears. You usually fall on your butt. So I don't know if it was a mixture of missing the target or because he overspun, but he continued to spin. Instead of going 12 to 6 and stopping on the opponent, he continued to spin out of control, making a full 360, and walked right into a left hand, which is well timed from the southpaw stance when Robertson is a orthodox fighter. So kudos to Robertson for landing that punch. But that's what it was. He just overspun and got caught.
Yeah. Right. When you're spinning back, you throw the kick, and then you've got to pivot back to your guy. The idea, one of the fundamental things, is to have your hands up, right? To block in case you've got that Kenny Robertson coming at you, yeah?
Ideally.
Okay, as long as I know what's the right thing to do.
Jay just wants to get the gist, so he can use it.
So I can go home and practice in the mirror.
Next, we have Nico Musoki versus Albert Einstein Tuminov. Well done, Albert Einstein. I like that. Tuminov won via unanimous decision, 29-28 all around.
This was a fun one. This was we didn't have a Fight of the Night award for this show, but this would have been one of my nominees.
This was the welterweight fight, correct?
Yeah.
Correct, 170,
Yeah, I agree. I thought this was going to get Fight of the Night, and Dana White decided to give 4 performance bonuses rather than 1 Fight of the Night to two fighters and then 2 performance bonuses. So he didn't give these guys Fight of the Night, but if there was a strong second place or a Fight of the Night bonus, they would have got it. They went to war.
This was mostly a kickboxing match, I thought, at least in the first round or two. Both of them were trading a lot of good body kicks. Mousasi, I gave Mousasi the first, Tumanov the third, and the second, I believe, I don't have a note, so it must have been pretty darn close, quite frankly.
A draw.
All the scores across the board were 29-28. Yeah, fair.
I agreed with it. It was a good stand-up.
I agree with it, too,
They gave probably the most, like you said, a Fight of the Night, but they gave this fans what they wanted, like an exciting fight, 2 guys standing toe-to-toe, blood, striking, a good overall MMA fight.
It's a good card when these 2 guys who really bucked it out didn't get any of the performance bonuses because there were so many good ones on the card. But I agree, it was definitely a good performance. Had there been a Fight of the Night, that should have been it. Next we have Akira Corassani versus Sam Sicilia. I think Akira Corassani is the native in Sweden, if I am correct. And Sam Sicilia won via KO in round 1. Oh, God. Sam Sicilia looked good.
Yes, he did.
He looked really good. What did you think?
That was a badass knockout, man. That was what did he think? He threw a right uppercut, reloaded right overhand.
Yes.
Caught him right on the temple and just laid him out. That's going to be one of those UFC 2015 best
highlights,
knockouts for sure. That's
absolutely
a beautiful knockout, beautiful highlight, man. I mean, I feel bad for Akira. They got knocked out in his home country, but man, that was a beautiful performance by Sam Sicilia.
Sam Sicilia is so aggressive, and he has that kind of like just unstoppable power.
He
believes in his power. He believes
Absolutely.
in it,
He sells it.
That one, if it had gotten out of the first round, I think that would have also been a Fight of the Night contender. Those guys, both of them looked sharp, dancing around a lot in the good way, looking for angles and swinging like crazy. Yeah.
The next one, not gonna lie, it surprised me a little bit. We had at 205, we had Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis in his pink shorts as always, and Ryan Darth Bader. We have a 4-time All-American wrestler versus a 2-time All-American wrestler. Sometimes that means we see no wrestling. They both fear the ground game. We want to see some stand up. Phil Davis looked like he was trying to wrestle Bader more than Bader was trying to wrestle him. In the end, Bader won via split decision. What'd you think?
Yeah, 29-28 across the board.
No, it's split decision.
Man.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, 28-28 in one direction or another.
Correct.
I did give it to Bader. I was I'm possibly a little bit more of a Phil Davis fan. I think just because of his personality, if nothing else.
Yeah.
And when he hit the scene in the UFC, I remember it was around the same time as John Jones, and I remember thinking these guys are so almost clone-like to each other. John obviously has become the fighter that he's become. And we haven't seen that yet from Phil, but I still believe that that we can. Phil is in one of those zones where it depends on which Phil Davis is going to show up. This is not the Phil Davis that we saw against Glover Teixeira a couple months ago.
And the Phil Davis we saw against Glover Teixeira was not the Phil Davis we had seen prior. I mean, I think this guy is definitely advancing in the forward motion. And I don't think that he lost any of that during this fight. But what I did see was he was landing some good kicks, and his kicks looked good. But when it came to setting up his boxing and mixing his kicks with his punches, I wasn't too thrilled. Whereas Bader was coming more with a straight boxing style, straight punches down the pipe, and really landing. It almost seemed like Davis was having a hard time finding his punching range. He could find the kicking range once again, but when he went in to get the punches, it was a whiff and a miss, swing and a miss. So I think he needs to work on, if anything, his boxing. I think once he perfects his boxing and his kickboxing as one, unstoppable.
Yeah, it's hard for me to criticize the guy's boxing other than that it did not appear or it just wasn't clicking that night.
Right.
But, a lot of that is Ryan Bader just being really good on his feet.
It was because of his competition, I believe. But, honestly, for me, this one was boring. This was a boring fight.
Really?
I like both guys, and they're both top fighters. They're both, I think, ranked in, 6 and 8 or something. They're both in the top 10.
5 and 7, but
there you go. But this one was just a boring fight, man. It was boring. The fans were booing, and what it was Bader and Phil Davis have success on the feet sometimes, but it all comes because of the wrestling, because they take down opponents and they make opponents fear their wrestling, and it sets up their striking. Now you have 2 All-American wrestlers who really, you rule out the wrestling, and now they have to show their striking, and the setup is in there. They're not biting on the feints and this and that, and that's why their striking looked like it went down a notch in this fight and made it not that exciting. And as far as the decision, it really could have gone either way. That could have been Phil Davis's fight, I believe. I don't remember scoring it specifically every moment of the fight, but I remember at the end of the fight thinking the last round is up for grabs, and Phil Davis had some kind of punch in the eye or eye poke in his eye, so it just swelled a little bit.
Third round, yeah.
And I think the facial damage of Phil Davis is what gave Bader the fight. I think the judges looked at it and said, this fight's not that exciting. Don't really know nobody's really landing any devastating punches. Nobody's really getting rocked or slammed on the head. Yeah. But Phil Davis is bleeding and his eye's swollen. Let's give it. I mean, that's the way I saw it. It could've gone either way.
When it's that close, you look at those minor details and you definitely look at the damage done.
Bader got a takedown in the third, and of course that definitely secured the third round for him. I gave Davis the second, but just barely.
Very different styles though. Davis seemed to be more active. He really seemed to try to switch levels as much as he could. You saw him throwing the low hook and then the high hook, the low hook and then the high hook, as if he wanted to wrestle, setting up the shots.
The more athletic guy, the more flexible guy. He's
definitely.
Great flexibility.
But Ryan Bader's kicks were looking sharp. He really seemed tight and composed. So kudos to both again.
Yeah.
Next we have at 185, Dan Hendo versus Gegard Mousasi. This is another debatable one. I personally agree with it. Mousasi won via TKO round 1. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how this is debatable. Dan Hendo was out. He once again revived a little bit at the end, but
funny sequence here earlier in the fight, and just 1 minute of action early in the fight. Mousasi kind of backed off from Hendo, noted his left eye, Hendo's left eye, but referee Leon Roberts said keep fighting, and Henderson didn't really sell it either, and it was a strange moment. And then shortly thereafter, Mousasi catches Henderson with a right?
It was a right,
I believe, a right,
almost to the back of the head. It
kind of clipped him.
Yeah. But in action, Henderson drops to the canvas, head and back against the cage, and Mousasi swarms on him. Leon Roberts jumps into position to really to kind of see closer, and was on the opposite side of when Henderson was grabbing for Mousasi's leg for a single. I have less issue with the Andy Ogle stoppage versus this one. This one, I think you probably could have let go a few seconds longer as well.
Right.
But it is what it is, and the referee Leon Roberts stopped it in 110. And
real quick before we get to the next one, because we got to hurry up here. What'd you think, Alan?
Real quickly, I thought it was actually an early stoppage on this one.
Did you?
Hendo wasn't out. He wasn't hurt. I mean, he got his equilibrium knocked off, and he kept trying to fight. I think this one got stopped a little bit early. In my opinion. All
right, and then Alexander the Mauler Gustafsson versus Anthony Rumble Johnson, a really highly anticipated fight because the winner is, said to fight John Jones next.
Yep.
We either would have had the rematch with Gustafsson Jones or a new competitor, Johnson. Johnson ended up winning via TKO in round 1, 2 minutes and 15 seconds in. I know not many people predicted this, but it was well played. Anthony Johnson rocked him with an amazing right and followed it up on the ground with some ground and pound. This was definitely not an early stoppage. If anything, a late stoppage. What did you think?
Well, it could be considered a late stoppage, but you have to, I think this is a whole nother subject, and I'd love to get into it one day. We don't have time. But as far as the stoppage, this is the main event. This is a huge international card.
Yes.
Like you said, 30,000 people, new arena. It's on all these new stations and networks, and it's first time in 50 million homes in Russia. Look, these guys are selling a buttload of tickets. A buttload of money is on the line, and a title eliminator is on the line. So, yeah, you let the guys fight it out until it is obvious, completely obvious, and that's what the ref did, and I appreciate him letting it go. It was tough to watch Gustafsson take damage, but I guarantee you Gustafsson is not mad that he let it, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more.
Can't argue early stoppage on this one for sure.
It depends on how big the fight is, and this was a big fight, so
I completely agree. When you have this much on the line and there's an early stoppage, it really is a career effector. You got to let it go.
I agree with that, but that said, all of that criteria technically, in my opinion, should be separate to the safety of the fighters. The safety of the fighters trumps all of what's what's on the line. And, that's it wasn't an early stoppage. I don't think necessarily it was a late stoppage because you do want to give Gustafsson that shot. But we have a new number one contender now in Anthony Rumble Johnson.
I think we're going to see Johnson versus Jones, and I'm really excited for that one. All right, guys, we have to wrap it up here, but I want to do a prediction really quick. What do we think about Silva versus Diaz? I know you've trained with Anderson Silva a little bit at Black House MMA. What do you think?
The Spider. Yeah, Anderson.
Anderson Silva.
Gotta go with Anderson.
Outclass.
Well, it really depends on. I haven't been training with him that much as of lately, or seen him that much as of lately. But it depends which Anderson Silva shows up. But if anything remotely close to the old one, he's too big size-wise for for Nick Diaz to compete with him.
And Reebok sponsorship, like, dislike.
We will see in the future because they haven't given us any details yet.
All right, we'll see.
That means round 3 for you coming back on the show, man.
Looks good for the future of MMA. As of right now, I don't know. My manager does a good job in sponsorship, so can Reebok compete with what my manager does? We'll see.
That's the question.
Let's get you on back after your match with Filthy Rich here.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. We're going to give him some rub of good luck, right, J10?
Yep.
Some AfterBuzz.
man.
Alan Jouban, congratulations on your career thus far in the UFC. You have really been one of those guys that's marketed yourself properly and gotten yourself to a co-main event, your second fight in the UFC. Congratulations on an awesome fight. We look forward to seeing you fight, and we might be there.
Please come.
And we'll be fine. We'll be looking for you in the locker room after. Like, Alan, you know it. I don't know them. I don't know that small studio. Anyway, J-Tan, where can we find you on social media?
As always, J-Tan716. Mom, the water should be boiling by now, so you better check on it.
Al dente, Mom. Alan, where can we find you?
At Alan Jouban. Everything's pretty much at Alan Jouban. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all social media. Check me out.
Simple and sweet.
Friendster.
Cool. Guys, you can find me at Daria the Jersey Devil Berenato on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. I will be fighting February 7th in Victorville, California for CFL. Then I'll be fighting March 8th for the U of MMA with Mr. J-Tan.
Awesome.
It's all scheduled.
We've got it official here.
I have tickets. Systems Training Center has tickets. Coast Fitness has tickets. Get them. See you guys later.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Do we buzz you later? I think we still do.
What's that?
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.